The loud, sharp knock at the door startled me. It was past midnight, and I wasn't expecting anyone. Rachel was supposed to be working late, as usual, and I'd been sitting alone in the living room, stewing over her lies. I got up cautiously, heart pounding, and opened the door. There he was. Ethan. The man I'd only seen in pictures, standing there in the flesh, wearing that same smug smirk I'd seen in their text messages. It wasn't just that he was here, it was how he stood, like he owned the place, like he was daring me to react. His confidence made my blood boil. "Can I help you?" I said, gripping the doorframe tighter than I intended. Ethan cocked his head, hands stuffed casually into his pockets. "I figured it was time we met, Josh," he said, voice dripping with arrogance. "You know, given the circumstances." I froze. My mind raced. The circumstances? Was he here to gloat? To rub it in my face? A part of me wanted to slam the door in his face, but another part, the darker part, wanted answers. Wanted a fight. "What the hell are you doing here?" I asked through gritted teeth. Ethan took a step closer, ignoring the tension radiating from me. "Rachel told me you'd probably find out sooner or later. Honestly, I didn't think it would take you this long." He laughed, a low, condescending chuckle that made me want to wipe the smug look off his face. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. If he was going to pull this nonsense, he wasn't going to do it where my neighbors could hear. "You've got 5 seconds to explain why you're here before I throw you off my porch," I growled. Ethan shrugged, unbothered. "Relax. I'm not here to fight. I just thought you should know. Rachel's done pretending. She's with me now." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew she was cheating, but hearing it laid out so brazenly, like it was some sort of casual announcement, lit a fire in my chest. My fists clenched, but I held my ground. "Done pretending?" I echoed, my voice low and dangerous. "She's still married to me. Or did you conveniently forget that?" Ethan smirked. "Not for long, man. She's already planning to file. I just thought it'd be better if you heard it from me instead of her. I mean, let's face it, you were always just a placeholder." The arrogance in his tone was too much. Without thinking, I lunged forward, grabbing him by the collar and shoving him against the wall. His cocky smirk faltered for a second, replaced by a flicker of fear. "Listen to me, you little punk," I hissed, my face inches from his. "You don't get to show up at my house and talk about my wife like that. If you think I'm just going to roll over and let you two walk all over me, you're dead wrong." Ethan squirmed, but I tightened my grip. "Whoa, chill, man. I'm just trying to be honest with you. Isn't that what you wanted?" I released him with a shove, and he stumbled back, straightening his shirt with an indignant glare. "You've got issues, dude," he muttered, backing toward his car. "No wonder she's leaving." As he drove off, tires squealing, I stood there, fists shaking, the cool night air doing little to calm the storm inside me. Rachel was gone, but not just emotionally, she'd made her choice, and Ethan had been sent here to deliver the final blow. The nerve. The audacity. But this wasn't over. Not even close. I turned back toward the house, a new determination coursing through me. If they thought they could ruin my life without consequences, they were about to learn the hard way just how wrong they were. I stormed back into the house, slamming the door behind me so hard the walls shook. My chest heaved as I paced the living room, replaying every word Ethan had said. "Rachel's done pretending. She's with me now." The smugness in his voice was seared into my brain, fueling the fire in my veins. Minutes passed, maybe hours, and still no sign of Rachel. My mind raced with questions. Did she know he was coming here? Did she send him? The thought made me sick. But more than anything, I felt an overwhelming need to hear it from her, to look her in the eye and make her admit the truth. When I finally heard her car pull into the driveway, my heart started pounding again. I stood by the window, watching as she stepped out, perfectly composed, a small smile on her lips like she hadn't just blown up our marriage. She was still in her work clothes, carrying the same bag she'd taken every day to her so-called late meetings. I met her at the door before she even had a chance to set down her keys. "Busy night?" I asked, my voice cold and steady. Rachel froze for a moment, caught off guard, but quickly plastered on her usual bright smile. "Hey, Josh. Yeah, work was a nightmare. I'm exhausted." She breezed past me, dropping her bag on the counter and kicking off her heels. The sheer normalcy of it made my stomach churn. I followed her into the kitchen, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "Was it work?" I asked sharply, my voice louder this time. "Or were you with him?" She froze mid-step, her back to me, but I saw the tension ripple through her shoulders. Slowly, she turned around, her expression carefully neutral. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Rachel," I snapped. "Ethan was here. He came to my door, Rachel. He told me everything." Her face paled for a split second before she forced a laugh. "Oh, come on, Josh. Are you seriously going to believe whatever that idiot told you? He's probably just trying to mess with you." "You're lying," I said through gritted teeth. "I saw the texts, Rachel. I've seen the way you've been sneaking around, all your late nights at work. Don't insult my intelligence." For the first time, the mask slipped. Her eyes narrowed, and her smile faded, replaced by something colder. "So what if I am?" she shot back, her tone sharp and unapologetic. "What are you going to do about it?" Her words hit like a slap, but it wasn't the shock of them, it was the venom. The sheer indifference. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even pretending to be sorry. "Are you hearing yourself?" I demanded. "After everything we've been through, after everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" Rachel crossed her arms, her posture defiant. "Oh, don't give me that everything I've done for you speech, Josh. You're not some saint. Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." The audacity of her words stunned me into silence. For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't think. She was blaming me for her betrayal. Like this was my fault. "You're unbelievable," I finally said, my voice shaking with anger. "You cheated, Rachel. You lied to me. You ruined our marriage, and now you're trying to act like you're the victim?" "Oh, grow up," she spat, rolling her eyes. "People cheat, Josh. It happens. Maybe if you'd been paying more attention to what I needed, this wouldn't have happened." Her words were like knives, cutting deeper with every syllable. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was the realization that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd loved and trusted, was capable of this level of cruelty. She didn't care. Not about me, not about our marriage, not about any of it. "I warned you, Rachel," I said quietly, my voice low and dangerous. "I warned you not to push me. And now you've gone too far." She scoffed, brushing past me like I wasn't even worth her time. "Oh, please. What are you going to do, Josh? Cry about it? Have fun with that. I'm done." She grabbed her bag and headed toward the bedroom, leaving me standing there, fists trembling, heart pounding, my mind a storm of rage and pain. But one thing was clear, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Rachel and Ethan thought they could destroy me, thought they could walk all over me without consequences. But they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The game had only just begun. I stood in the kitchen long after Rachel disappeared into the bedroom. Her words echoed in my mind, "What are you going to do, Josh? Cry about it? My jaw clenched, and a cold, steely resolve settled over me. She thought she had me cornered, that I'd roll over and let her walk away unscathed. But she didn't know me as well as she thought. I didn't go to bed that night. Instead, I stayed up, piecing together every clue, every lie she had spun over the last few months. The late nights, the gym memberships, the whispered phone calls. The texts with Ethan were still burned into my brain, and now, with his smug visit, I had enough fire in me to burn their little world to ashes. The first step was simple: information. I needed to know exactly how far this went, how deep their deception ran. Rachel's arrogance had made her sloppy. She hadn't even bothered to change her passwords. Her email, her social media, her bank statements, it was all at my fingertips. As I sifted through her messages and transactions, a picture began to form. She wasn't just meeting Ethan in hotel rooms or sneaking around during work hours. They were planning a future together, complete with plans to drain our joint accounts. There were even hints that Ethan had been sniffing around my business contacts, likely hoping to sabotage me professionally. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was calculated. By the time the sun began to rise, I had a folder full of evidence. Screenshots of messages, transaction histories, emails where Rachel discussed her strategy for leaving me without a leg to stand on. The woman I'd married wasn't just unfaithful, she was ruthless. But I wasn't about to let them win. When Rachel finally emerged from the bedroom, she looked almost carefree, her usual smug confidence intact. She poured herself a cup of coffee, not even sparing me a glance as she scrolled through her phone. "Good morning," she said casually, as though the night before hadn't happened. I stared at her, my stomach twisting. How could she act so normal after everything? Did she really think I'd just accept this? I didn't respond. Instead, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she called after me, her tone more annoyed than concerned. "Out," I said shortly, slamming the door behind me. The drive to my lawyer's office was a blur. I'd never imagined I'd be sitting in a room, laying out evidence of my wife's infidelity, but there I was. My lawyer, Mark, listened intently as I explained everything: Ethan's visit, Rachel's lies, their plans to drain our accounts. "This isn't just infidelity," Mark said, his expression dark. "This is outright theft. She's trying to set you up to lose everything." I nodded, my jaw tight. "What can we do?" Mark leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his notepad. "We hit back. Hard. We freeze the joint accounts, secure your business assets, and file for divorce on grounds of adultery. With the evidence you've provided, we can take her for everything she's got." His words should have been comforting, but they didn't feel like enough. I didn't just want to win in court, I wanted them to feel the weight of what they'd done. That night, I put phase 2 of my plan into motion. Rachel had been careless, and now it was my turn to make her regret it. I reached out to a mutual friend of ours, Emily, someone who'd known Rachel since college but had always been closer to me. Emily wasn't a fan of Ethan and had expressed her doubts about Rachel's late nights before. She was more than willing to help. "Wait," Emily said when I told her everything. "You're telling me she's been scheming with that scumbag Ethan and planning to steal your money?" I nodded. "That's why I need your help. You know how she loves to brag about her plans when she thinks she's in control. If you can get her to slip up, it could make all the difference." Emily agreed, and the trap was set. She invited Rachel out for drinks, playing the part of the supportive friend while steering the conversation toward her new relationship with Ethan. Meanwhile, I stayed behind, setting up cameras and ensuring every word they said would be recorded. When Rachel came home that night, she was visibly tipsy but glowing with satisfaction. She didn't even notice the subtle changes I'd made, the shifted laptop, the hidden microphone. She tossed her bag on the couch and smirked at me. "Don't wait up," she said, heading for the bedroom without another word. I waited until I was sure she was asleep before I retrieved the recording. Emily had been masterful, drawing out every detail of Rachel's betrayal. She'd confessed to everything: the affair, the money, the plans to leave me high and dry. Her voice dripped with contempt as she laughed about how pathetic I'd been for not noticing sooner. It was all there, laid bare. The final nail in the coffin. As I sat alone in the living room, listening to her words on repeat, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The anger, the pain, the betrayal, they were all still there, but now they had a purpose. Rachel and Ethan thought they were untouchable, that they could destroy my life without consequences. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Everything Rachel and Ethan had schemed was now a weapon in my hands. Their arrogance, their carelessness, it would be their undoing. Rachel, as usual, was lounging at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone with that same smug air of superiority. I walked in, calm and collected, and grabbed a cup of coffee. She didn't even glance up. "I froze the accounts," I said casually, taking a sip. The mug slipped from her hand, clattering onto the table and splashing coffee everywhere. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "What did you just say?" "I said I froze the accounts," I repeated, locking eyes with her. "Every last one. You and your little boyfriend won't be touching a dime of my money." For a moment, Rachel just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then, she laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "You can't do that. I have just as much right to that money as you do." "Not anymore," I said, pulling out the folder of evidence I'd compiled. I tossed it onto the table in front of her, watching her expression shift from disbelief to panic as she flipped through the pages. Text messages, bank transactions, emails, everything was there. "Enjoying the read?" I asked, leaning against the counter. "It gets better. I've already filed for divorce. Adultery, fraud, and attempted theft. Mark says the courts will eat this up." Rachel's hands shook as she slammed the folder shut. "You're bluffing." I shrugged. "Call Mark yourself if you don't believe me. He's more than happy to explain how this is going to play out." She shot to her feet, her chair screeching against the floor. "You can't do this to me, Josh. Do you know how long I've put up with your boring, pathetic life? Do you know how much I sacrificed for you?" Her words only fueled my resolve. "Sacrificed?" I barked out a bitter laugh. "You've been scheming behind my back for months, Rachel. You don't get to play the victim." For the first time, her confidence cracked. "This isn't over," she hissed, grabbing her bag and storming toward the door. "You're going to regret this." "Not as much as you will," I called after her, my voice steady. The door slammed, and the house fell silent. I stood there for a moment, letting the tension drain from my body. I'd expected her to lash out, but her reaction confirmed what I already knew: she wasn't prepared for the fight I was bringing. Later that afternoon, I called Ethan. I hadn't planned to confront him directly again, but after Rachel's outburst, I couldn't resist twisting the knife. When he picked up, his voice was as smug as ever. "Josh. To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Cut the crap, Ethan," I said. "I know everything. The affair, the money, the plans to screw me over. It's all out in the open now." There was a pause, and then a low chuckle. "So what? Rachel's leaving you. You're just making this harder on yourself." "Harder on myself?" I echoed, a cold smile spreading across my face. "Ethan, I've already frozen the accounts. Every dollar you thought you were getting? Gone. And I've filed for divorce. By the time this is over, you and Rachel will be lucky if you can afford a motel room." The smugness in his tone evaporated. "You can't do that. That money was mine," I interrupted. And I've secured everything you thought you could take. But don't worry, Ethan. I saved a little something for you too. What the hell are you talking about? He demanded. I let the silence hang for a moment, savoring the growing panic in his voice. I recorded your little visit the other night. The threats, the admissions, you were awfully candid. My lawyer thinks it'll play beautifully in court. The line went dead. That evening, Emily called. You're not going to believe this, she said, barely containing her laughter. Rachel's blowing up my phone. She's panicking, saying you're trying to ruin her life. Good, I said simply. That's exactly the point. Emily paused, her tone softening. Are you sure you're okay, Josh? This is a lot to handle. I thought about it for a moment. Was I okay? Not yet. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I was in control. I'll be fine, I said. One way or another, this is going to end. Rachel didn't come home that night. I didn't expect her to. She was probably with Ethan, trying to figure out their next move. But it didn't matter. I was already 10 steps ahead. As I sat in the living room, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal, I felt a strange sense of peace. Rachel and Ethan thought they could destroy me, that they could take everything I'd built and walk away unscathed. They were wrong. And soon, they'd find out just how wrong they were. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. After her stormy exit and Ethan's panicked call, I expected some kind of backlash. Instead, her message reeked of desperation. We need to talk. Face to face. Tonight. I didn't respond. Let her stew for a while. Instead, I spent the day finalizing things with my lawyer and consolidating the evidence into an airtight case. Mark was confident we had everything we needed to not only secure the divorce in my favor but to ensure Rachel and Ethan faced serious consequences for their schemes. By the time evening rolled around, Rachel showed up at the house uninvited. I opened the door to find her standing there, looking frazzled for the first time in years. Her makeup was smudged, her hair messy, and her usual polished demeanor replaced by raw frustration. Josh, she began, her tone softer than I expected. Can we talk? I stepped aside without a word, letting her in. She walked past me into the living room, glancing around nervously as though expecting some sort of ambush. I closed the door and followed her, staying silent. Look, she said, turning to face me. I know you're angry. And I know you feel betrayed. But this doesn't have to get ugly. I raised an eyebrow. Doesn't have to get ugly? Rachel, you and Ethan planned to steal from me. To ruin me. You think I'm going to roll over and let you walk away clean? Her composure cracked, her voice rising. It wasn't like that, Josh. We were just planning for the future. A future I can't have with you. Planning for the future? I scoffed, stepping closer. Don't insult me, Rachel. You weren't just cheating, you were plotting. You tried to take everything from me. She crossed her arms, her jaw tightening. What was I supposed to do, Josh? Stay in a dead marriage with a man who doesn't excite me anymore? Who doesn't even notice me half the time? I clenched my fists, but I kept my voice steady. So your solution was to cheat? To manipulate me? To try and bleed me dry financially? Rachel's eyes flashed with anger. You don't get it. You never got it. All you care about is work, your image, your precious little routines. Ethan, he saw me. He cared about what I wanted. I laughed bitterly. Yeah, he cared so much that he's running scared now. Do you know how pathetic he sounded when I called him out? He's nothing, Rachel. And soon, you'll have nothing, too. Her face fell for a moment before she regrouped, switching tactics. Josh, she said, her tone suddenly sweet. We don't have to go to war over this. We can handle this like adults. Split everything 50-50. No need to drag lawyers into it. I stared at her, incredulous. You think I'd let you walk away with half after everything you've done? After you tried to take it all? She moved closer, reaching out to touch my arm, her voice soft and coaxing. Josh, come on. We had good times together, didn't we? Don't let this end in hate. We can settle this peacefully. I stepped back, her touch like poison. The time for peace ended when you and Ethan started plotting behind my back. Rachel's mask finally shattered, and the venom I knew was lurking beneath spilled out. Fine, she snapped. You want a fight? You'll get one. But don't think you're some kind of hero, Josh. You're just a bitter, boring man who can't stand losing control. I held her gaze, my voice ice cold. And you're a liar, a cheat, and a thief. You chose this, Rachel. Now you'll live with the consequences. As soon as she left, slamming the door behind her, I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, yes, but also relief. The lines had been drawn, and there was no turning back now. The next day, I set the next part of my plan into motion. Rachel and Ethan had operated under the assumption that their betrayal would remain a private matter, a secret they could control. But I wasn't about to let them slither away unnoticed. I compiled the evidence into a neat package, screenshots of the texts, recordings of Rachel's confessions, the financial transactions. Then, with Mark's blessing, I sent it to key people in our social circles, mutual friends, Rachel's family, even a few of her colleagues. The fallout was immediate. By mid-afternoon, my phone was buzzing non-stop with messages from shocked friends and furious in-laws. Rachel's carefully crafted image of the perfect wife was shattered in an instant. Emily called, barely able to contain her laughter. Josh, you've set the town on fire, she said. Rachel's losing her mind. She's been calling everyone, trying to spin it as some kind of misunderstanding. Let her try, I said. The truth speaks louder than her lies. That evening, I got a call from Ethan. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? I asked, my voice sharp. You've made your point, he said, his tone a mix of anger and desperation. But this is getting out of hand. Just let it go. I laughed, the sound bitter and cold. Let it go?